Do you know what plagiarism means? Do you know what plagiarism is? Does it really matter? Is plagiarism all that serious? Yes, it is. Let's take a look. We call it plagiarism the silent killer. What is plagiarism? Plagiarism is the unacknowledged use of another's ideas or expression. Whenever an idea or phrase does not come from the student's own research, its source must be documented. So as a writer, you must document any information that is not yours. You don't tag your opinions, you simply identify and document the sources for those opinions that aren't yours, those opinions that you have researched and incorporated into your own text. And we're talking about intentional plagiarism, that plagiarism born out of an intent to deceive. Sometimes there is plagiarism that is born out of ignorance. You just didn't realize that you were plagiarizing because you documented the source, but you didn't document it properly. And that's what we're going to look at. Plagiarism combines theft with fraud, and its penalty is correspondingly severe. Plagiarism can result in failing the assignment, and in most cases, failing the entire course. The instructor may recommend that the student be suspended from the university. Let's look at one form of plagiarism called blatant plagiarism. Here's the original passage. In Huckleberry Finn, Mark Twain's imagination, when it is poetic, is the imagination of idle and melodrama. It is only somewhat less obvious that the book banks heavily on melodrama and burlesque and farce, which are to comedy what melodrama is to tragedy. And notice that the original passage is in quotation marks and there's a citation. Now here it is blatantly plagiarized by a student. Look at the difference. There is no difference. It's the same information, but it is parenthetically documented. So what's the problem? Chase 148, the author's name, the author of the essay is given, the pagination, page 148. So why is this called blatant plagiarism? Although the preceding rewrite has a citation at the end of the passage, this documentation only acknowledges that the last sentence of the passage has been taken from the source. So if we were to go back and take a look, we would see that only that last sentence, it is only somewhat less obvious that the book banks heavily on melodrama and burlesque and farce, which are to comedy what melodrama is to tragedy. That is the source cited in parentheses, the last sentence, the preceding sentence, because the author did not tag the first sentence and connect it to the second one in some way so that the reader knows all of this came from the original passage. And that's often what happens when students do not realize that they're blatantly plagiarizing. Also, since the rewrite changed neither the diction nor the content of the source's statement, the entire rewrite should have been enclosed in quotation marks and its source identified in a footnote. And here it is corrected. You'll see that the entire passage is enclosed in quotation marks, and then we give the parenthetical citation. Let's go to a second form of plagiarism, tacit paraphrase. Paraphrasing, putting the words of the original source into your own words. Here's the original passage. Take a look at it. It's the same passage we looked at earlier. Now here's the student's tacit paraphrase. Obviously resulting from an imagination of idle and melodrama, Mark Twain's Huckleberry Finn relies on the elements of melodrama, burlesque, and farce. Okay, that's a paraphrase. Do you know what the problem is? Let's take a look. The problem is that a comparison of the original passage with the student's rewrite shows that the student merely reproduced Chase's passage in a slightly modified form. That's, after all, what paraphrasing is. But even when you paraphrase or summarize, you must provide a citation. The student could have avoided plagiarism by simply acknowledging the paraphrase with either a footnote or an MLA citation. And here's a correction. Again, since we have one sentence, then the Chase 148 takes care of that sentence. A third form of plagiarism is called mosaic. And there's the original passage again. And here's the student's mosaic paraphrase. Huckleberry Finn was conceived as a sequel to Tom Sawyer. So far, doesn't sound anything like the original. does it? The original, however, boasts only a bland intelligence and an obvious sentimentality, while Huck Finn generates a textual intensity through the use of melodrama, burlesque, and farce. Well, what's the problem? The noting of burlesque and farce in Huckleberry Finn has been taken from Chase's essay, so we have to assume that that's not the student's original idea, and it has been incorporated into the student's text without citation. Although the student's contribution to the passage, we have to acknowledge this now, is greater than that in the preceding examples, the circumstances remain the same. The ideas in the rewrite appear to be the student's own. So we have to correct that and acknowledge Chase. If you're still unsure of what constitutes plagiarism, well, our library, the John C. Pace Library, offers an online tutorial regarding plagiarism. The tutorial offers several instances of plagiarism, links to official university policies, and strategies for avoiding plagiarism. Let's just check out the link for a moment and see what happens. Because again, you want to be thoroughly familiar with plagiarism. Here is the main page of the site. So you can go here and look at the various topics, explanation, examples, common knowledge, review, because there are some things that are considered public domain information. They are common knowledge information and they don't have to be acknowledged, so you can go there and find out what those are. Citation styles, tips for instructors, all kinds of information that will help you as a student writer to avoid plagiarism. Preventing plagiarism, remember that any information paraphrased, summarized, or quoted directly from the source should be cited. Anything. If you summarize, if you paraphrase, if you quote directly. Take careful notes, being sure to use quotation marks around everything that comes directly from another text. And enclose all borrowed passages in quotation marks. And cite the sources. That should be quotation marks, no S on quotation. The last form of plagiarism. Borrowing from one's own work for another assignment is also considered plagiarism. Did you know that? Ask your instructor if such an issue should arise. And to make sure that we're not plagiarizing, we have used, enclosed, or added a works cited page, and that's what you should do at the end. Even if you acknowledge Chase in the text, you must still include a works cited page. I'm Mamie Hixon, Director of the Writing Lab at the University of West Florida, here with information on plagiarism, the right advice about plagiarism. Give us a call at 474-2129. If you're not sure what plagiarism is, go to the University of West Florida's Pace Library link to plagiarism.